And you're asking, like, what do we do about...
Is you sign a contract with someone.
So real quick, before you did that, did you...
More than 30 years. I got my real estate license in the
and your origin story.
Is that he made an age joke the last time we were. I'm gonna use that Kuka.
You know, I'm a little more strict with what I'm looking at.
Hey everyone out there in YouTube land and Facebook world. I'm sorry if I'm a little dark over here, then try to bring the light in. Anyways, I wanted to, I have the best way to introduce this wonderful lady, Wendy Patton. And I am very, very glad that I had the opportunity to bring her on our podcast to give you guys all the value as much as possible to see and just to absorb. I've been going to her meetups every single month. And I always look forward to just meet and greeting with her, just listening to her and all her seller finance stories and all her stories from when she got started. So I wanted to bring all that to you guys and everybody out there in YouTube land and Facebook and our Facebook group. We had some technical difficulties, but we're getting it handled. And I'm so happy to introduce Wendy Patton. Wendy, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, Randy. I had to move to a different location, so hopefully this is good.
That's okay. Yes, that's awesome. So hopefully we're not, the internet signal is not in and out. So,
you'd think if you pay enough for the internet, I always get, I want the highest speed. And then, man, it has the worst problems. So anyway. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the nice words, and I'm really glad to be on your show today.
Awesome. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And, we got over in our Facebook group, Metro Detroit Off Market Real Estate Group, we got over 5,000 members in that group. So not only my YouTube channel, but we're also we're streaming to that Facebook group as well. So it is really good. And so we have some people, AJ Amin says, hey, Wendy, thanks for joining. So got a lot of people coming in here. And by the way, if you're out there, put some questions in the chat as we go. We'll get to them as we go. So first thing I wanted to do is kind of get, I know that how you kind of got started because I've been to enough of your meetups. So by the way, one of your meetups is happening this Thursday. And I cannot wait. It's at the Michigan State Community Center, right? In Troy. Mm-hmm. So, make sure you be there. Unfortunately, I can't make it because I got to be out of town for my day job. Got to pay those bills, right?
Yep. I understand.
But it's definitely going to be a great meetup. So I always recommend you go. And, so with that being said, kind of tell us a little bit like how you got started in real estate. Like, did you just wake up and say one day and just say, I'm going to get into real estate?
No, actually, the weird thing is, well, I started when I was young and I had graduated from the University of Colorado. I'm from Colorado, was born and raised there, military brat. And my mom had gone to some real estate investing seminar thing, like now that I host at the Michigan Real Estate Investors Group. She went to a seminar like that years ago. And she heard a speaker. I don't remember who it is, but she bought the guy's course because she said, Wendy, she told me later, like I knew that real estate investing was a way to future financial freedom. So she got home with the course though, and there was one big problem at home, and it was my dad. He said, no, we're not investing in real estate. We're not going to do that. So she gave the course to me when I was moving to Michigan. And on the way to Michigan, I started listening to that course the whole way in the car because I had to drive a couple days, right? So I'm like listening to it over and over. And back then it was cassettes, right? In the 80s. And I remember thinking when I was driving, like, gosh, I want to be a real estate investor. I mean, I don't want to go take that job I just took. I mean, I want to start this right away. But I did take my job. And I remember it said that you should join a real estate investor group if you're serious about investing. So I did. I joined a local group in Michigan and learned about real estate investing. And I remember, sitting there in one of the meetings, and we were at round tables, because if you wanted to go have dinner first, then you would sit at a round table. If you wanted to come to the seminar, you came later. Well, I did the dinner because I'd eat anyway, and my company paid for it because I was in a hotel, because they moved so many people into Michigan at the time that we were all living in hotels and motels. So that's kind of how it started, Randy. I had an opportunity to buy a house to live in versus just renting, and all the apartments were 6 months waiting list. So we were in hotels, and I was everywhere. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was gridlocked. And so as I was sitting, at this meeting one night, it was a round table, and everyone said, like, where do you live? Where do you live? Where do you live? And it got to me, and they go, where do you live? And I go, Red Roof Inn, room 101. And they're like, what? And I go, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm one of those people, blah, blah, blah. And they go, well, why don't you just buy a house? And I go, that's funny. And they go, no, seriously, why don't you? And I said, well, let's see. Let's start with, I make $10 an hour. And they said, so? And I said, well, I don't have any savings. So I don't know how to do it. So, like
Just
they were looking for me.
Okay.
Yes. What's your excuse? What's your real excuse,
Yeah.
Wendy? And I was like, I just didn't know. Like, I didn't even know anything. And someone said, well, why don't you just use your credit card, get a credit card, and, take a cash advance, and that could be your down payment. Well, back in the 80s, you could do that. You didn't have to season funds. You could just take a cash advance, put it right in your account, and that was my down payment. So I bought my first property in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. And and back then, it was a 3-bedroom, and it was $438 a month. And so I rented 2 of the bedrooms to 2 ladies in my hotel at $250 a month each. So I was making like $62 a month, which paid my rent, my credit card payment. So I was living free, and I thought, well, I'm so cool. This is really cool. Well, they didn't call it house hacking back then, but that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So I house hacked, I guess that's what it is. And I lived free. So that worked out really, really well for me. And that's how I got started. And then I started learning, I did that a few times, but then I learned about creative financing, which kept me from having to use credit cards and debt and things like that, because I didn't know about that in the beginning.
And just to let people know out there, you can't do that now. You can't put you can't put your down payment on a house through a cash advance on a credit card. Right. You just can't, unfortunately.
Well, if you sit there for like maybe 90 or 120 days or however long it has to season where they don't question it, then maybe, but I mean, you really don't want to do that anyways, because there's creative ways you can buy real estate without doing that.
The idea is to stay creative no matter what.
Yeah.
So 100%. So with that, how did you get into creative financing and do obviously the house hacking and stuff like that? But how did you find out about creative financing? Was it another seminar?
Attending the seminars, I always encourage people, like, go to as much as you can, learn as much as you can. It doesn't matter which technique you end up with. They all work. People always ask me, which one should I do? Which one do you want to do? Do you want to be a rehabber, a wholesaler, a lease option person, creative financing? It's just that's kind of what was my niche. And it started with a seminar, and it was actually a seminar on sandwich leases. I bought actually it was probably from Jeffrey Taylor, Mr. Landlord, back in the long time ago. He had this book for like $39 on how to sandwich leases. So if you could find someone who wanted to rent the property for $750 and you knew it would rent for $1,000, you would keep the $250 difference.
Yep.
But then later, so I started with that, and I had a couple of really good ones. My first one was like $600 a month net in Rochester, and I had that one for years. This guy just won a 900, and I rented it for 1,500, and I didn't know what I was doing, but he didn't want to sell. And so then I learned a little more later about lease options. So then I learned how to sandwich lease option. So I didn't just get the lease. I wanted to get the right to buy that property and the right to sell that property. So that's how I got into the whole creative financing thing. And then I got into subject twos when a friend of mine I was just like, I was slam dunking those things, Randy. I was like doing so many of them. I would just kept doing them. I just got a niche, and I just got good at it, and didn't try to be the best of everything, right? And I've always done rehabs, so pretty much,
Yeah.
maybe since the late 90s, or mid 90s, I've always done rehabs. I've never really speak on rehabs, but I'm almost always have had a rehab going in all these years, and sometimes 3-4 crews at a time going. But in the meantime, I got really good at lease options, and I had this friend, a guy that only did subject twos. And
Okay.
he said, well, why don't you just get the deed? And I said, well, my people, my sellers are too smart for that. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, they're educated people. They're typically moving from a 250 to a $400,000 or $500,000 home.
Right.
And he goes, and you think that they're too smart to give you the deed? And I go, well, I just mean like they're not that desperate, which they're not usually that desperate. And he said, well, have you ever asked? And I said, no. And he goes, I bet you some would give it to you. And I said, I don't think so. And so I said, he goes, I'll challenge you. And I go, okay, next time someone calls me, and if they call me to ask me, I'll just ask them if they'll give me the deed. So I got a call from a couple. It was a guy, and his wife was in the background. And he said, hey, you bought my neighbor's house on some kind of lease thing, and you bought it. And he didn't know what it was called, but, and I said, yeah, yep. And he said, we're wondering if you might consider buying ours. So I asked a few questions, found out they already had found their new home, but they needed about $2,000 to move. And that was it. And they weren't behind in payments. They qualified for another mortgage, so there was no issue.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me ask you a question. And he goes, okay. And I said, well, would you be willing to sign over the deed to your home, and I'll start making your mortgage payments, and I'll give you $2,000 to walk? Or to move. I didn't say walk. We use that. I mean, I said, you got to use their terminology. Well, I'll give you $2,000 to move. And he said, oh no, let me find out. Hey, honey, this is that Wendy girl that Gina referred to us, and just wondering if, she asked if we give her the deed to our house, and she'll make our mortgage payments, but she'll give us $2,000 so we can move. What do you think, hon? And I hear her go, fine with me. And he goes, yeah, we'll do it. And I went, that was my first one. So, it just goes to show that you just don't know what people will do or why they do it. They have different motivations than we do.
And that's the thing. Not everybody's an investor. Even though you own your own home, you're not an investor. You don't know all these strategies. You just want to move on to the next thing.
Right. And you don't know what their motivation is,
So we have a quick question, and I think this kind of ties into everything here. Anthony Sienna, and I'm sorry if I butchered that last name, said, for someone who's new at this, what is creative financing? And creative financing is a broad term of a lot of things put together. Yeah. So I'll let Wendy explain kind of what that, what we use the word creative financing for.
Yeah, you're totally right. Creative financing is a variety of different techniques that are creative ways to buy real estate without using your own mortgage or usually your own credit either. And sometimes not your own cash. So example, a lease option is not actually financing with the seller, but it would fall under that umbrella of creative ways to buy real estate. But it is not actually seller financing, but it's creative financing. Subject twos, where you get the deed from a property subject to their mortgage. So they have the mortgage on their property, they give you the deed, you're now the owner, and you start making the mortgage payments. Sometimes you give them some money down, sometimes they pay you to take it. Yeah, that's really cool. Sometimes they actually pay you. It depends on what they owe and what's going on in the market at the time, and what their terms are and their mortgage. So that's one. Land contracts are creative financing in Michigan, and we have those mostly in the Midwest, but it's like where the seller holds the mortgage, basically. It's a little bit more than that in Michigan, but that's it in a nutshell. And anything that's kind of creative where the seller does more than just the typical, okay, give me cash or give me a mortgage. Cash me out, I'm done. It's anything that's kind of beyond that.
Yeah. And what I find funny was every state for land contracts, in another state, it might be called something different, but it's the same thing. It's like, for instance, Deed of lieu, I think it's called. And I'm probably saying it out of order, but other states have it. It's just named different, but the
Yeah,
same concept is there.
yeah, a land contract is usually called like a contract for deed. So you have a
Yes.
contract and you get the deed when you finish the contract. And it's just an amortization schedule. And in a lot of states, it could be called a deed of trust, which is like,
Yep.
in Arizona, it's called a deed of trust, but really that's like their mortgage documents. They don't really have a land contract per se. So
Okay.
it is, and so when you say land contract, if you're talking to someone in California, they're gonna be like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." But in the
Exactly.
Midwest, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, for sure, we call them land contracts.
Most definitely. So basically, anything that you can think of besides a traditional mortgage, and cash is
Yeah.
creative financing.
Yeah, pretty much.
You can even do a cash deal as creative financing if you're getting creative with the funding.
Sure, you could.
You
You could. I
know,
mean, you can borrow
so
100% of it from a private lender.
yeah. So everyone is able to get into creative financing some way or somehow. And that's kind of where, I kind of wanted to steer a little bit more of this towards is, there's a lot of people out there, they hear this word creative financing, they hear subject to, they hear this, but they don't know exactly how to bring it up to the seller. So one thing I wanted to ask is how do you bring it up to a seller? How do you go about saying, hey, like for instance, if they're asking too much or their mortgage is too high to sell for a cash offer, how do you go about talking to a seller about that?
Well, typically, it kind of depends on how I got to the seller, Randy. So
Okay.
if I, so like I don't go after subject twos actually. You could,
Okay.
but I don't go after them. They just come to me. So pretty much a wholesaler will bring me subject twos. That's where I get most of mine. Or
Okay.
they're an offshoot of me looking for lease options, and then I realize they're not a good option candidate, so I go route B, which is like a sub two, or not even a land contract, and I'll explain why. So typically, for me, my strategy started with lease options. That was my
Okay.
journey. And I use a script that is essentially something very basic. I look for rent ads, okay? And I'll just essentially say, like let's say you answer, I go, hello, and you're like, hello, and I go, hi, my name's Wendy. I was calling about your home for rent. Would you tell me a little bit more about it? And then you say blah, 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 blah. Or I'll ask you a question that's not already answered in the ad.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it says it's a 3-bedroom, or how many square feet is it, or when was it built? Does it need any work, or is it updated? Things that I really do kind of want to know. But really, what I'm doing is I'm trying to ask them questions to get them to talk, because the more people talk and answer questions, the more they like you,
Yep.
and the more they might open up. It's like
Okay.
a rapport building thing. But you also have to be able to read the owner. If they're like, yep, they're in a hurry or they don't want to get to the detail, you got to get to the point, depending on the personality type. If there's someone who starts talking, sometimes they'll be like, oh my gosh, well, it's a long story. And, they start talking and I listen. I've been invited over. I had a little lady one time invited me over for cookies one day. She's like, can you just come over for cookies and milk? And I'll just tell you all about it. And it's like, okay,
Yep.
you just never know where the conversation is going to go. And then you also get some people who are like, okay, yep, get to the point. What do you want? So, but bottom line is I ask a bunch of questions and then I say something to the effect of like this. I'll say, gosh, Randy. And if I know your name,
Yep.
if you said your name, or I might ask you during the conversation, like, what was your name again? And you say Randy, then I'd say, at the end, I'll say, Randy, your home, it sounds pretty interesting to me. It sounds really nice. Is there any chance that you might consider selling it? And I just shut up. And I count 1, 2, 3, 4, and sometimes I'll say, no, never. I'm going to keep it for rental forever. Okay. Hey, if it ever changes, I'm really looking for something I can rent now, buy later. If it ever changes, would you just keep my number?
Yeah.
You never know when someone's going to call you. It could be, I've had people call me 10 years later, so give them your number, get their contact. You could also put them on a follow-up list. Call them in a year if you wanted to, like really have a good system.
Yeah.
Put them in your CRM, or if you have one, or a spreadsheet, or whatever you use. And then in a year, call them again. Because sometimes landlords are excited about being a landlord at some times in their life, but then something changes. They either get burned out, they have a bad tenant experience, their spouse dies. I mean, you don't know what's going. They're ill.
Every
You don't
day
know
is
what's
a
gonna
different
happen to
day.
you. Yeah. So if you wanted, you could kind of keep them in there, especially if you had a good conversation, and call them back. But if I have about 30 to 50% of people, when I use that script, say yes to me
Okay.
over the last 30 years. And
Wow.
that's in any state, in any market, any city, anything. It's just, but you got to know what to say. Now, that doesn't mean it's a good deal just because they say yes. Sometimes
Right.
they'll say, well, yeah, for the right price. Well, that's a yes to me, but it's also not a motivated seller, probably.
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking for the yes from a motivated seller. Someone I'm really looking for that person who says, oh my gosh, yeah, actually, I really do want to sell it. I just, it didn't sell on the market, so I thought I better rent it. I mean, it's on, my realtor just didn't sell it yet. Bam, that's kind of the person I'm looking for, right? And it's so
Yeah.
easy to make those calls. It's so easy, boom, 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 boom. And that's how I got started with it. But then when I start meeting with someone and I see them, or I see the house, or I do the background, for a lease option, I'm really looking for a seller who is motivated but not distressed.
Okay.
So they're not in trouble financially because the title still stays in their name during that option period. So I don't want someone who's financially failing.
Got it.
Oh, I'm moving out of my house because I lost my job and I can't make my payments and I'm moving in with my mom. That is a motivated distress seller. I might still buy it, but that might be the subject to. So then that might be where I cut out into sub 2
Yeah.
or something else. I got to get them
Okay.
off the title because I don't want them screwing up the title during that time period.
Right. Now, each one of these properties and each one of these ways, lease options, subject to land contract, they all have their pros, cons, things like that. And it depends on, from what I'm gathering from you, it just depends on the answers from the seller and their distress depends on the option that you go, hence the word creative.
Yeah.
You have to be on the spot, try to figure out, hey, can we figure out where we can go as you're getting this information? Okay.
Yep.
We just need to move. We need to get out there, but we still have a mortgage that is close to retail.
Yep.
Okay, well, what's your mortgage details?
Yes. Yeah. It's starting to, it's like exploring that with them, right? And it's just something that you get a feel for based on the person, like, and
Yep.
and sometimes people say, well, what exactly do you say to them? Depends on the person and it depends on the situation. I go down a different path with each person based on their situation. But what I do is primarily ask questions.
Yeah.
And then it leads me to my next question.
Yeah, and you always make it a win-win deal. Win
Yes.
for you and win for them. They get what they want.
Yep.
They get what they can, and you get what you need. Okay.
Yeah.
For instance, I get this question a lot for sub twos because, as you know, I'm a wholesaler, and so we deal a lot with people coming through and asking. We put that on the table, and we get, well, what about the due on sale clause? The mortgage company's not going to want that, or they're going to call the note due or this or that. How do you get past? That's one of the biggest questions.
Yeah, my sellers rarely ever ask that. My students always ask that. I mean, every
Okay.
investor asks that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I've actually had a seller ever ask that.
Well, maybe not in those words, but
Maybe. The thing that the sellers worry about is, well, wait a minute, like, so you're not going to pay off my mortgage and
right.
It's going to stay in my name? Yes, it's going to stay in your name. I'm going to make your mortgage payments, but it's going to be in your name, which could affect your ability to get a mortgage down the road. That's usually their biggest concern from what I've seen. And
and what's your feedback
at least my
to that?
people.
What's your answer to them for that?
I'm really straight with people, Randy.
Okay.
I tell them the truth. Hey,
Yeah.
it could affect your ability to get a mortgage down the road.
Mm.
Are you looking to buy another house soon? Now, look at, here's the thing. I had one recently. The seller was like, well, we don't want the mortgage in her name a lot longer than like 3 years because we're going to buy another house. And I said, I forgot what was her first name. But anyways, and I said, whatever her name was, I go, Mrs. Seller, I go, you're not buying a house for a while. You just missed your last 3 payments. You're not getting a mortgage for a while. You're going to have to rebuild your credit. But when I take over your property and start making your mortgage payments, guess what? I'm going to pay perfectly. It's going to come out of my bank account on the first of every month, and it's going to help restore your credit. It's not going to give you the ability to get a mortgage right away, but it is going to like take this blip and then make it blah, 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 again. Perfect, 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 perfect. It'll help raise your credit score. But when you miss 3 months in a row, it's kind of like pre-foreclosure, and you're not going to get a mortgage for a while. Normally, I pay you off within a couple of years, or pay off the mortgage, not them. I usually pay off the mortgage within a couple of years. However, I'm not going to guarantee that for you. So if that's a problem for you, I'm probably not the buyer for your home.
So there's a couple of things that I know. If you do it through a servicer, like a servicing company, like make the payments through there, and you do it for a full year, with their next mortgage, all they got to do is take that to their mortgage company saying a servicer has been paying this.
Okay.
And they'll take that off their debt to income ratio.
Yes. I think even with the contracts, they could prove that I've been paying it. They may be able to do that as well. But it's probably more legit that way. I don't know. I haven't. It's interesting. The ones that I've done recently, these sellers weren't wanting to get a mortgage right away anyways, or they already had a new mortgage. They already qualified for 2. They didn't need to pay it off.
Got it. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And that one that I did with that lady who wanted to, she was like asking about that. I ended up selling it on the market because I wanted to wrap it. So it was I think a 3% interest rate. And I don't really want to get rid of it because the lower the interest, that's a good sub too, right? When it was a low payment, but not only that, the lower the interest rate, the higher the portion of the payment that goes toward principal. So it's like a double dip. You have a lower payment and more toward principal every month. So it's a huge, huge thing right now. That's why I'm like so big on sub twos right now. That there's such a huge opportunity because we have all those low interest rate mortgages. If you can get your hands on those. But anyways,
I have one of those 3%. So
oh, you do? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm like, I'll just, I'll wrap it. I mean, wrap it, which means like I'll sell it on a land contract. I'm not going to give it away in a sub two because I will never give away someone else's deed. I won't do that.
Right.
Because I want to protect that because it's in their name, that mortgage. So I'll sell it on a wrap, which means I'll sell it on a land contract and do a whole new financing thing for a buyer at 7%.
Okay.
Do you know, one person offered on that land contract. And I only asked for like 15% down. And my buyer, I had like 3 full price over for asking offers, conventional, to cash me out. So I took one. But it was weird. So I don't know, maybe that, that was like a few months back. Maybe now it'll be better because those interest rates keep going up. I don't know.
One question I have is how you, have you had people ask about, well, what if you stop making payments?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they ask that, like, what if you don't make my payment? So then I say, gosh, Randy, that would concern me too for doing this with someone like me. Yep. Randy, what would make you feel comfortable to know that I'm going to make your payment? What could I do to make you feel comfortable? And I throw it back on them.
Okay.
But then most of the time also I'll say, look, do you want references? Do you want to pull my credit report? If you've got good credit, you could say that. Do you want to pull my credit report to see how I make my payments? Or whatever. Or I'll say, and then the other thing is I say, you're going to be notified immediately if I don't make your payment. So you're going to know that right away. And however, I'll have it come right out of my bank account.
Okay.
Then I'll wait to see if I need to go to the next level. Because the next level could be, if they say, well, I'm still concerned, like if you do, I don't have any way to get it back. I mean, most people don't know all the deed stuff and all of that, so they're not going to get this far. But if they did, there is an advanced strategy I could use that would say, okay, tell you what, if I'm over 15 days late on your payment, I will sign a deed to deed it back to you immediately. And you can have it held by an attorney.
Most definitely.
And that way,
So-
if I don't pay, they can record that deed and I lose all my rights.
Yeah. So Jay Jones, real estate Jay Jones, actually said, always ask questions, and the creative solution works, for him. So by all means, you have to ask those questions. And I like the way you phrased it, where you didn't go straight to okay, well, we can put a clause in there for the deed to go back to you.
Never would I do that.
So you just went, well, what makes you feel comfortable?
Yeah. What would make you feel comfortable to know I'm going to make your payment? Because I would be
Got it.
concerned too. And then
Yeah.
just shut up and let them answer. It might be like, I just want it to come out automatically of your bank account every month. You know what? I'll absolutely do
done.
that for you. I always do that.
Yep.
That might be their only concern, Randy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
don't assume that we know what their big concern really is.
Right.
Like what they're really thinking in their head.
Okay.
So it's the same thing with like lease options. When they think, you mean you're going to put a tenant in there? Like, yeah, I'm going to put a tenant in there, but I'm responsible. Well, what happens if they trash it? I never assume I know what trash means to them. So I say, gosh, I hope they never trash it. But when you say trash it, what exactly does that mean to you? They might say, well, they're going to put red paint on the wall. That could be trash it to them.
Right.
And the next person could say, like, they set it on fire. Totally different answers then, right?
Right.
But unless I know what they mean by trashing it, I can't answer that question properly. So I ask the question back, what does that mean to them? Explain to me exactly what that means to you so I can answer your question properly.
So one thing that this brings to me is that you're always honest with the seller, no matter
Always.
what, about
Always.
what you're doing.
Yes.
And there's so many
100%.
people out there that are not, and then the seller finds out later and they lost all that trust.
Yeah.
And I may not say, like, as a wholesaler,
Yeah.
I say I'm wholesaling without saying the word wholesaling.
Yeah, because they don't know
So-
what that is anyways. A
Correct.
homeowner doesn't know what that is.
So I just say I work with a bunch of different partners and,
Right.
you know,
Buyers that,
and buyers. And I go, we have different strategies. And one of my strategies is this, and we may go that way, but we're going to explore all options,
right.
So
Right.
that's just me being honest with them and them understanding that there's a lot of people out there that are not honest.
Right. They're
And
liars. And that's bad for our
Exactly.
That's bad for our business.
So when the seller finds out actually what they're doing, it's bad,
Yes,
So-
it is. And then that's when they back out or they try to get out
Correct.
of the deal or they sue you later or whatever.
But lawsuits horrible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that you don't want that. You don't want that.
No.
I mean, I've made millions of dollars investing in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't need to do it dishonestly. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, why? So I can make another $100,000? No.
yeah.
No.
So
I like to sleep at night. I like to feel good about it. I like
Yeah.
to have a relationship with my sellers. I like,
Mm-hmm.
not that we're going to be friends forever, but sometimes we're friendly. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been so many people that I've done double deals with.
Yep.
They'll sell me a house, and then I find out later they're like, "Hey, we got 2 more." What? Okay. And then because they love me, then they'll sell me 2 more. Or I had one lady, she sold me a house on a lease option. I made 40 some grand on it. This is like 20 years ago. I made like
Okay.
40 grand on that deal. That was a lot then. Okay. And about 2 years after I bought her house, she called me up. She wanted to live on the lake, so she wanted to just rent when she sold her house. She just wanted to rent something and just live on the lake. She called me up 2 years later and she goes, "Hey, I had this shoulder injury, I had a problem, ding my credit, so now I need to be a buyer. Can you help me find a home? Do you have a home for me to buy? She became my buyer later.
That's
The lease
funny.
option. But I
That
mean,
is
I've had
funny.
so many stories like that. It's just like people, I've sold people a house. And
Uh-huh.
there's one house I've owned 3 times. I've owned multiple houses multiple times. But
Okay.
I've owned this one house 3 times because the buyer, bought it from me, closed, and like a year or 2 later said, hey, do you want to buy the house back? We need to move to wherever. So I bought it back, lease optioned it again. Same thing happened. It was the weirdest thing. Yeah, but they actually
That's
closed
awesome.
on it and bought it, not just defaulted
Yeah.
on it. I mean, they literally owned it. I was done, out of there,
Okay.
like gone.
Wow. So
So keep it open and
for
honest.
most definitely, you got to be open and honest with the customer. Now, you don't have to speak your terminology. You got to speak the seller's
Yes.
terminology.
Always, and that's a big
Okay.
issue that a lot of people make. They'll say, I'm gonna lease option your house, and I'm gonna sandwich lease option it, and the seller's like,
Yeah.
what? I don't even say that. I just say,
Right.
I'm gonna lease your home with the right to buy it at some within 3 years or whatever it is we agree to.
Yep.
And I'm going to either rent it or rent it to someone else who wants to be a future homeowner. I don't know which it is, but I am your tenant. I just won't
Right.
live there. I keep it
Okay.
real simple, just real simple
Yeah.
but true. True but simple.
So now that we established like kind of a little bit more about your business and what you've done, and what you're doing, what is it how are you getting your leads? You said earlier that you're getting them through wholesalers and
Yeah.
just through connections and things like that. Are you currently marketing as well as? Okay.
But Randy, I'm
So,
at a totally different point in my life now, right? So
okay.
now I don't have as many rentals anymore.
Okay.
And I don't do as many fix and flip anymore. I
Okay.
do a lot of other things. Now I do a lot with hard money lending,
Okay.
where I'm now the lender for other investors getting started or building their business, or I do a lot of apartment syndications. So I
Okay.
kind of those are my big focuses. So I don't do anything to market that. It's pretty much word of mouth, and then I have a couple of people that are amazing rehabbers that get them, get almost everything financed that they do. I
Right.
do for them. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So it's it changed a lot, but I still do deals. I have a
Okay.
flip that's closing this Friday that I just finished a month ago, and I had 12 offers on it. A fix and flip. It's in Auburn Hills that I just finished. So I'll do them, but an old friend brought that to me. He's the pastor of a church, and he had 2 ladies in his church who had this house they needed to sell. One had lived there, set fire in the kitchen, and they took the insurance money. She had dementia or something.
Yep.
And so it was a very small fire. It didn't even go to the rafters. It didn't go through the drywall at all. But it had smoke damage. So the whole place needed to be cleaned and the kitchen gutted and,
Yep.
whatever. But anyways, it was a slam dunk deal, but they took the insurance money and just sold it to me for a cheap deal. I made a lot of money on that deal. But
That's awesome.
they were so thrilled that I bought it from them and they didn't have to list it, or they, with what they
Yeah.
got from me, what they got from the insurance, they hit the jackpot, they thought. And they might have. I don't know what they got
100%.
from insurance. I have no idea. But I hit the
And-
jackpot too. and that came from, just word of mouth. Wholesalers bring me deals.
Okay.
Yeah, if you ever have a deal that's a potential sub-2 that you don't want to do,
Yep.
shoot it my way. If it's going to take more maybe than you want to do on it, or it's not in your area that you want to invest on, keep that in mind. But I
Most
don't
definitely.
market for it. It's mostly word of mouth now. One of my
Okay.
agents came to me once. I just sold I think I told this in the investor group, the Michigan Real Estate Investors Group. I bought an 8 unit right before COVID hit, and it was in Midtown, and I got it for $200,000. And it was, it needed to be gutted. I mean, there was people living in it, but it was not my standard. So I started, as someone moved out, I would renovate the unit, make it really
Yes.
charming, old time, blah, blah, blah. And I renovated the whole thing, and it's in my Roth IRA. And I just sold it. I closed on it July 31st. And that took like a few extra, years. They took really an extra year than I thought, just because probably COVID. And there was one lady I couldn't evict for 2 years because of COVID.
Wow.
But anyways, other than that, it went pretty well. And that I sold it for $800,000 and it went right back into my Roth IRA.
Wow.
It was a, yeah,
That's
it was a big
that's
deal.
crazy.
I put 200
That's
grand
huge.
in it, bought it for 200 and sold it for 8. Plus it made
Most.
cash flow during those years.
Oh wow. Okay.
So those are the kind of
So
things I like doing, but they come to me, like it was just one of my agents said, "Hey Wendy, I got this deal." She does probate stuff. She said, "I don't know what to do with it." And I go, "I'll give you my advice. Let's sit down and talk." We sit down and
Yep.
she goes, "Well, I thought maybe you'd want to buy it." I go, "Oh, well, tell me about it." She goes, "Well, it's an 8 unit." And I go, "I don't really buy apartment buildings." And she said, well, "And it's in Detroit." And I said, "I don't do Detroit." And she goes, "Gosh, it's right by Wayne State." And I said, "Well, tell me more." Wait,
Would
tell
you
me
say it's
more.
right by a college?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need
Then
to-
I was like, Midtown, ding, ling, ling, ling. Wait, it's in Midtown? Yeah, yeah. I'm interested. What do they want for it? It never hit the market.
Yeah.
She goes, she inherited this, her mom, there was a mom who lived in California. Her daughter was a prominent doctor in Detroit, owned it, was not really a great landlord. It was kind of a slummy place, really. But she said, she paid 200 grand for it. If you just give me 200, I just can get out of it. Okay, give me 200. Done.
Done. All right. Easy peasy, right?
So sometimes they come that way. And,
Yeah.
I've been in business a long time. So a lot of times things come back to you or people, bring you deals. They know what you do. You tell people what you do.
Yes. And I've been a big component of be loud.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Be loud. Tell people exactly what you're doing. Especially if you're a beginner, that is
Yes.
what
Yes.
I like. Everybody who's a beginner, they're like, I just want to keep to myself. I want to learn. I want to do this. And I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want any negativity coming in. Well, unfortunately, you're going to get people who are negative, who's never done it before. And they're going to say you're stupid for doing it. You need to
Yeah.
learn to push those people off and
Yeah.
keep going. And how you get yourself into these opportunities is by getting loud and
Yeah.
talking.
It's only because
And
she knew I was an investor.
yep. I'll give you one
Yeah.
example. This right here. If I did not get loud and tell Wendy
Yes.
that I have a podcast and I'd love to have her on, you would not be here. So
Yeah, right. That's true. You were
you know,
persistent too. Because I said, I don't really do too many anymore, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he kept asking me, and I was like, you know what?
I think I probably asked you like 10 times.
But that's who wins. Randy, that's who
Yes.
wins in this investor game and this whole world, right?
Yep.
It's like me. I don't take no for an answer either, just so you know.
Yep.
I don't accept that as an answer. I want to figure out how to get a yes. So I'm the same way. I'll keep bugging someone or I'll try it at a different angle or a different approach or a month later,
And what's funny is that every time I brought it, like, hey, did you see it? I just had him on my podcast. Why did you? So it was funny, and that's the key thing is you got to be persistent. You got to get
Persistence.
loud,
I
and
think it's really important. Persistence is key for anything, really, any success,
Yes.
right? It's
100%.
persistence. Consistent, persistent activities
yes.
produce
So
major results.
so it's getting kind of late. So I want to be respectful of your time. Okay. And I kind of want to get into a little bit of what are you planning to do for the future? And then how can our audience help you out in the future as well, or even right now?
Well, I will say, thank you for offering the help, number one. Two
Yep.
is, I think at my point in my life, I want to help other people more. And that's really
Yep.
true, Randy.
Yep.
I do. I want to help other people. And, I don't do coaching because I don't want the responsibility. I don't want to get paid for it. I don't want to have to feel like that's a job. But I coach people all the time. I help them all the time.
Yep.
People call me and they ask me advice on a project or a property, and I don't mind helping them because but I want to know that they're doing activities too, right? They're doing
Yes.
something about it or whatever. Or, like I have, I have a book and I have
Yep.
a course. Well, if they want to pick my brain and have me teach them every single thing in there without even buying the book, no. Start with that, like read some stuff, and then you're gonna have deeper questions. I'll be able to help you, but I don't want to teach you everything that's in there because that would take forever. But
Right.
I love to help and give back. And I'm actually trying to figure out what is next for me in my life as far as
Okay.
that. But I know it will involve something like that, helping young entrepreneurs and specifically real estate investors, men and women. I don't care. I
Yep.
like helping everyone. And I don't care which direction they're going in. I like helping them. I know enough about almost every aspect of investing that I can help them at least with the right questions and direction.
Yep.
But the creative stuff is really, of course, that's when I definitely can that's slam dunk. I can do that in my
Yes.
sleep,
Yep. Most definitely.
You know,
And we do have a lot of people in our Facebook group that are brand new as well. We have some veterans, but a lot of people that I interact with, they're brand new, they're just starting out, and or they're trying to get their first investment property, or they're a new wholesaler, or whatever the case may be. They're just trying to test the waters and see how things are going.
Yeah.
So, by all means, I do recommend Wendy's book and her course. I do recommend, at least taking a look at that. First, read the book. Then if you want to get into more, take the
Right.
course,
Right. If it's
um,
for you, go get the course. If not, no harm, no foul. You learned a lot. If you read that book,
Exactly.
it will help you with a lot of creative financing, and just all the scripts are in there, and a lot of things in my contracts are in there. It
Yep.
really helps you think about how to even evaluate the profitability of deals. So it's actually a really good book. I just redid it in 2023.
Yeah, I just saw you had the launch of it, and it was awesome. Now that's all for the investor side. I also know you've partnered up with Ronald Walker for the wholesaling course. Is that right?
Yeah, he does the
So
wholesaling club, a silver wholesaling club for the group. Yeah.
correct. And I also do recommend anybody who is looking to get into wholesaling. I'm an open book by any means, so anybody can ask me any questions and things like that. I'm happy to JV with anybody, but if you're looking for looking to get into some sort of mentorship, I recommend him 100% wholeheartedly. And I've actually done a few things with him. So
awesome.
that's the reason why I recommend him, because
Yeah,
I've actually worked with him. So, if anybody does have any, wants to take that course or anything, just contact me. My number is right here at the bottom. It's also in the show notes. I don't hide my number, so anybody can contact me. With that being said, I think your Facebook page as well, it's MREI as well, right?
It's Michigan Real Estate Investors,
Okay.
and it says official page. We have another page out there, but we don't use it, so it's got to say official page on that, and then you'll know that's the right one. Or MichiganRealEstateInvestors.com.
Okay.
Or
Awesome.
DetroitREA.com. They go to the same place.
Okay.
You could come to your first meeting free this Thursday if you want. The first one
Most
is
definitely.
free. Check us out if you haven't been. Come visit. And I'm there every month, unless for some reason I'm out of the country or something like that. But normally I'm there every month. I fly in. I go back and forth to Arizona in the winter to come to the meetings. To be there for everyone.
For as many meetings as I've been there, I don't think I've ever seen one meeting where you're not there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
So
good.
every
I
meeting
try
that
not
I've
to
been
miss.
there, you've been there.
I try not to miss, I know there's going to be one next spring that I'm going to miss because I have a trip planned, but
Hey, everyone deserves a vacation.
yeah.
So,
And it happened to be during that time, and it was the only time it could be because of,
Awesome. So with that being said, any last words, anybody wants to reach out to you for, say, maybe some lending or anything like that? Is there contact information that they can reach you?
Sure. You can always email me, Wendy@wendypatton.com. Very easy.
Awesome.
And that's my website too. So it's got my office number, wendypatton.com. If you want to go there, you can always call there. If Claire, my assistant, usually helps kind of screen the call just to make sure it looks like something that would be good. But I give my cell phone out in all of the meetings as well, and she'll give it to you as well if you've got a deal that's pretty hot and heavy. Or you can email me directly.
Awesome. So with that being said, we're going to bring this to a close. Wendy, I'm just going to bring you down. I'll talk to you right after the show. So just hold on there for a minute. And we'll go from there. Everyone else out there, you know, like I said, if you have any deals or anything like that you want to work with me on, I'll give you my full honest opinion on any deals for wholesaling or anything like that. I do have buyers looking out there. Wendy's one of them, you know, but you know, anyways, with that being said, I appreciate your time, Wendy. I appreciate everything. And everyone out there, please have a great day and let's all do deals together.
There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you'd notice too. Sneaking looks up and down from across the room.